You can draw this in Procreate. Welcome back for another Procreate tutorial for which you don't need any experience with drawing or with Procreate at all. During this tutorial, I will guide you through all the steps. We'll start with these basic shapes, then we'll start adding texture, and finally we'll add some magical touches. I'm sure that once you have finished this tutorial, you will feel so proud that you just need to share your result. If you're sharing it on social media on Instagram, then don't forget to tag me in the image, not just in the description, so I can find your work and maybe we'll see it in the next video. Just like these amazing results from my friends at Patreon. You probably know it by now, but that's the place to go if you want to learn even more about Procreate, because there I have more than 100 Procreate tutorials ranging from beginner level to more advanced levels. For this tutorial, we will be using free brushes only, brushes that are already in the app, but also some brushes that you can find in my free treasure chest. If you don't have it already, you need to go to freedomflow.com and you can get more than 70 brushes totally for free, plus an ebook about color theory. In this Procreate tutorial, we will be working on a canvas that is 2300 pixels by 3000 pixels with the color profile set to sRGB. You will find a link to the color palette in the description. And if you are ready, let's get started. The first thing we'll do is fill our canvas with a color. Let's go to the color palette and pick this first color in the first row. Then just drag the circle onto the screen. And now we have a soft yellow canvas. Next, we'll make a new layer by going to the layer menu and tapping the plus. And for our brush, we are going to use the script brush, which you can find under calligraphy. But the monoline brush would also work just fine. I just like how with the script brush, if you press harder on your screen, your brush stroke will become thicker, and if you press lightly, it'll become thinner. Now for the color, we are going to use this fifth color in the first row. The opacity of this brush is set to 100% and the size is set to 15%. And we are going to make our first mountain. It's a mountain in the distance and its peak will be about at 2/3 of the height of the canvas. Let's start about here. Make a wavy line going up here and then back down again. All the way to the right, make sure that you have a complete line. It needs to touch the sides. And once you are sure, you can drag the color underneath so you have a nice colored mountain. Next, we'll make a new layer by tapping the plus in the layer menu again. And for our color, we are going to the next color, which is the sixth color in the first row. Now we'll make even more mountains. Let's start over here again. Go up here, back down, and then back up again over here. A little bit higher, and then we'll go down all the way to the right. And then you can drag in a color. So far, so good. Let's make another one. We'll tap the plus again in the layer menu. For your info, we will be using quite a lot of layers during this tutorial. I'm thinking about 28. If you are having issues with the amount of layers, you can either make your canvas smaller or merge some layers as we go. Don't merge them yet though. I will let you know when it's okay to merge certain layers. Now for our color, we'll move on to the next color, which is the seventh color in the first row. And we are going to make another mountain and its peak will be in between these two. So let's start over here, go up, and then back down, and move to the right. Then drag in a color and onto the next layer. So go to the layer menu again, tap the plus for a new layer, and move on to the next color, which is the eighth color in the first row. And we are going to make a mountain over here. We'll start here, go to the right, then we'll make a wiggly line going down, and we'll move back up on this side and make a peak over here. Then drag in the color onto the next layer. Go to the layer menu again, tap the plus, and then for the color, you are guessing it, we are moving on to the next color, the ninth color in the first row. And now we are going to make a bit of a different shape. We'll start about here, pretty low, and then we'll move up a little bit, make a bit of a plateau, then we'll move downwards to the side, over here we'll make another peak, which has a bit of a plateau. And to the right, little peak over here. I feel like we can make this a little bit higher. Bit of a higher plateau. So something like this. Then let's drag in the color to fill these areas. And let's make this one a little bit bigger as well. You can easily adjust these things. Then just drag in the color onto the next layer. Let's tap the plus for a new one, and then for our color we are going to use this one over here, third color in the second row. Let's make a line over here to the other side. Hold your pen in place to make it snap to the quick line, and then tap one finger on the screen to make sure that it's a perfectly horizontal line. Then drag in the color. And now I feel like we have gone a little bit too low. I want everything to move up just slightly. So the way we can do that is by selecting all of these layers. You need to slide to the right on all of these layers except for layer 1, which is that background color. Then go to the move and transform tool, the little arrow. Then go to snapping and turn on magnetics. And now you can gently drag it up and keep an eye on that blue line. So I'm just dragging it up slightly and then tap the arrow again. You can see we are missing a little bit of blue over here. So what we can do is select that top layer, that blue one. Then we'll go to the arrow again. Let's move up. And then we can just drag this handle to make this a little bit bigger, and then tap the arrow again. Now we are going to continue with our layers. Let's go to the layer menu again, tap the plus for a new layer, and for our color, we are going to use this one, the 10th color in the first row. We'll start about here, and we'll make a wobbly line to the right, then we'll go up, make a little peak, go down, make some random rock-like shapes. We'll wiggle our way to the right. And now we need to make a line over here, all the way to the right. You can use that quick line again. I'll make sure that it's closed over here before I drag in the color. On to the next shape. Let's tap the plus in the layer menu, go for our next color, which is the first one in the second row. And I will make a hill over here. We'll start here, go upward a little bit, and then wiggle our way down. We'll move down over here. A wobbly line going in this direction. And then we'll go over here like this. Then drag in the color to fill the shape, and let's move on. Let's make another layer by tapping the plus. And then for the color, we'll grab this one over here. It's the second color in the second row. And we'll start over here, a little bit below the other one. Make a little wiggly shape here. And then we'll gently move up, making a hill over here. We'll go up here, all the way to the right, and then over here we need to go to the right side here, make a shape like this. And of course you don't have to exactly copy the shape that I have. Just make sure that you get something of like a triangular shape over here for what's going to be our water. Then let's drag in the color to fill the shape, and then move on to the next layer. Let's tap the plus again, and we are sticking with the same color. First we'll make a hill over here, about here, move to the right and make a wiggly shape, going down to about here, and then we'll make another one over here. We'll go up a little bit. You can't see it over here, but well, if you turn off that lower layer, you'll see that our shape is closed. Turn that back on and then fill these areas. Now finally, for our basic shapes, we are going to add a mysterious tower on this part of our hills and rocks. So let's go to this layer, layer 5, which is just beneath those rocks. We'll tap the plus for a new layer. And for our color, we are going to use this last one in the first row. And since we are on a layer below this one, we can't see whatever we draw here. Just as we move up, you'll be able to see it. Now let's tap with 2 fingers to get rid of this. And I want the center of our tower to be about here. Let's make a line upward. And I want it to stop about here, close to the top of our canvas. Then we'll give it, like the top of the tower will be a bit like the hat of a witch. Then back up. Then we can make it a little bit bigger, like this. Then over here we'll move down to the left of our center line. And over here as well to the right of our center line. You can make the line a bit wiggly. The tower has some character. Then make sure that you close the shape behind that rock. Otherwise the paint will spill out all over if you are dragging in the color, which we will do now. Drag it into the shapes. And now we have a nice tower. We have all of our basic shapes, but I don't want these shapes to look so clean, have these clean edges. So we are going to fix that. We are going to give our illustration a bit more character. And we are going to do that by using the eraser. Let's go to the eraser and I want to set it to my fine liner brush, which is part of the treasure chest brush pack. Let's check it here. We have the fine liner. The opacity of this eraser is set to 100% and let's set the size to 50%. And let's work from the back to the front. Let's start with our first mountain that we have created on layer 2. And we can zoom in a little bit. Now we can go along the edges with our eraser to make it a bit more like textured, less smooth. We can add a little crisp peak over here. And we are going to do this for all of these mountains. So let's move on to layer 3. And I will go along this edge. Just don't erase too much because then you won't have any mountain left. Just a little bit. And if you are erasing too much, you can always paint back in some of that mountain. And over here, make a nice peak here. And then on to the next one, which is layer 4. I want to get a nice peak here as well. A little bit jagged. Let's give our tower a little bit of space, moving this to the right a little bit. You don't want that mountain to touch that tower. You want to give that tower space around its like witch hat. That just gives a more pleasing composition. Make a jagged edge here. And then we'll move on to our next mountains, which are the purple ones on layer 5. Go along the edge. I actually want to remove this area so we have more room for these mountains here. Make it nice and jagged. Then on this side as well. So you can make your line a little bit wiggly to create those jagged edges. Because these mountains, they don't look all polished, they're not super smooth. Same goes for our tower on layer 12. Let's work on that a little bit as well. I want a nice crisp tip. Let's go along the edge, make it nice and jagged. Crisp tip. And you might need to make the brush a little bit smaller here. Let's go for maybe 15% to go along these areas. And like I said, if you are removing too much, you can just paint some back in. Then go along the edge here. On the left side, I feel like we have a nice characteristic tower now. Let's move on to the next hill or rock, layer 6. We can actually make the brush a little bit bigger again. Let's go for 35 and go along the edges. Make it a bit more jagged. So far, it's really easy, right? All the way to the right. Oh, we can remove this area. We can make this more pointy. Go along this one. Well, we can remove this one because it's too close to the one in front. Then on to layer 8. Go along the top areas. Make a nice pointy part over here. Very nice. Then on to layer 9. We're almost there for our basic shapes, that is, because of course soon we are going to add more texture and we will be working on a lovely sky with clouds. Just along the edge. Then on to layer 10. Really almost there now. And you don't have to worry about the lower parts. We are going to do something else for those areas. So as I make this line, every time I wiggle it a little bit to get those irregularities. There, then on to layer 11. And I think it's a nice idea to turn off layer 10 for now, because otherwise we won't be able to see this area. And I do want to see it. This is fine. Then on this side. All the way down. Jiggle, jiggle, there. So far, so good. Oh, let's turn back on that layer 10. I want to fix these areas right next to the water. It's not looking natural right now. So what we'll do now is go to the smudge tool. That's the little finger. And then we'll move down to the organic brushes and use the twig brush. You will set it to 100% opacity and we'll lower the size to 50%. And I will start on which layer shall we start? Let's start on layer 10. And now we will go along the edge over here And we'll make these horizontal strokes, creating this effect as if there's water there. I'm using very light pressure just to smudge this area a little bit. This is looking so much better. Then let's move on to layer 9. We need to work on this area as well. So again, horizontal strokes, only horizontal strokes. So don't go like this. That doesn't make it look like water. We need horizontal strokes very gently. And you can drag the water onto that hill a little bit and the other way around if you're going too far. Very gentle. You can actually pull a little bit more over here to make it a bit more rounded. I think this is great. Let's move on to what layer? This one, layer 8. That's this rock over here. Again, horizontal strokes just along the edge. You can pull this down a little bit to change the shape of the rock here. So what the smudge does is it kind of like pushes and pulls the paint around, so you can pull that bright blue onto the rock and the rock onto the bright blue, and then you get this nice effect. Then on to the next one, the last one, that's layer 6. But as you can see, this layer is underneath the water layer. So if we will be smudging here on this layer, let's just check it out. If we do that, you won't see anything because that water layer is still on top. So in this case, we can actually just smudge the water layer, layer 7. Let's do that. So we're smudging it away. You can remove a little bit here to make that rock a little bit more rounded. I think something like this looks perfect. For our next step, we are going to work on our sky. And this is probably the most challenging part of the illustration, but no worries, I will really guide you through the process. You can do this. First, we need to go back to layer 1, which is our sky layer. And then for our color, we are going to pick this one, second color in the first row. And for our brush, we are going to the airbrushing brushes and use the soft brush. The opacity of the brush is at 60%, and let's set the size to 25%. We are going to add a little bit of blue here to the top, just like this. Then we are going to switch colors. We are going to grab this one over here, third color in the first row, and we'll add that to the right side here. Then we'll switch to this color, fourth color in the first row, and add that to the left side. With multiple strokes, make the corner the darkest. So you get something like this, and then we'll use Gaussian blur. Go to the magic wand, then hit Gaussian blur and slide to the right. And let's go for something like 38%. And then tap the magic wand again. And now we are going to create some clouds. So let's grab a different brush, the medium brush. It is a bit less soft than the soft brush. It still has soft edges, but just less. For our color, we are going to use this one over here, fourth color in the second row. And the opacity of this brush is set to 100%, and let's set the size to 4%. And let's also make sure that we create a new layer for our clouds. Very important part. So let's tap the plus to create a layer on top of our sky layer. And now we are going to make these rounded shapes, big fluffy clouds here. I'm making rounded motions. Let's go to the right over here. Go downward here, a little part over here. all the way to the right, fill the cloud. Now let's add a little part over here. Then another cloud over here, again rounded motions, making the top of the cloud nice and fluffy. Go behind our tower over here, then to this side, and then for the lower part of the cloud, don't use a lot of those bumps. It's usually less bumpy at the bottom. Then a cloud in the middle. Let's start here. Gonna make these rounded shapes. All the way down here. And let's add a little bit here. Now let's make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's set it to a small 2%. And we are going to add a few small little bumps. Add a few touches to these clouds. Perhaps a little extra touch here, extra part. Then for this one, just some extra little bumps on our bumps. Now that we have this, we are going to turn on alpha lock for our layer. So go to the layer menu, tap the layer and turn on alpha lock, because we are going to add some extra color to these clouds, but we don't want to paint outside of them. And alpha lock will make sure that we can only paint on our clouds. Now for our brush, I want to use the basic flow brush, which is part of the treasure chest brush pack. Let's go to the top over here, the basic flow brush. And now let's first go and grab this color over here, the 5th color in the 2nd row. It's a bit of a lighter color than our base cloud color. The opacity of the brush is set to 100%, and let's set the size to 50%. And let's go over our clouds again, making rounded shapes, rounded motions, and don't cover everything. Here you can make some of these rounded shapes here in the front. Leave a little shadow, leave a little dark area over here to get some variation in that cloud. Over here as well, make some of these rounded motions near the edges. And you can see that with just a few little touches, these clouds are already starting to look more fluffy and more cloudy. These rounded motions, leaving some gaps. It's like magic. A little bit over here. Again, leaving some dark areas. Let's lighten the lower area here. Let's add a little bit here. We're also going to add some reddish tones. Let's go to the color palette and use the 6th color in the 2nd row. And I want to add some warm reds over here in our cloud. Again, rounded motions. You don't have to cover everything. I'm also using very little pressure. If you are having issues with the pressure or getting control over your brush strokes, you might need to adjust your pressure curve. You can find it by going to the wrench, then to prefs, and here you can see pressure and smoothing. And here you'll find your pressure curve. You might want to try making it look a bit like mine. It could help getting more control over your strokes. Let's get out of this menu again and continue adding some reds to our clouds. I also want to add a little bit over here. And here on this cloud. Again, you can see I'm making these rounded motions. Gently adding more of this red. I also want to add a little bit of this color, that an orange-like color. So let's grab this one, 6th color in the first row. And let me make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's set it to 20%. And add a little bit over here. Some nice warmth in our cloud. And I'm going to use this color on a layer below our clouds layer. So first tap layer 1 and tap the plus. And now on this layer we are going to add some light behind our clouds. And to create light easily, we are going to change the layer blending mode. Let's tap the N over here and set the layer blending mode to add. Add lightens everything. It's a great layer blending mode when you want to add light to a scene. So let's just try that out. We still have the opacity of the brush at 100% and the size still at 20. And let's go along the outside of these clouds here, again with rounded shapes, rounded motions, adding a bit of that backlight here. Over here as well. Light here and along the edges of this cloud. Then for this one, on the lower side, here at the top. And along the edges here. And then let's go to the Gaussian blur by going to the magic wand, hit Gaussian blur, slide to the right to make this glow softer, a bit like this. Then tap the magic wand again, and let's also add a few of these light wispy clouds just by using this brush. Make the brush a little bit smaller, 10%. I'll just make some of these like horizontal lines. These are very light, wispy clouds in the distance. It adds a nice extra touch. Then we'll move back to our clouds layer, layer 13, and we are going to turn off alpha lock. So tap the layer, turn off alpha lock, and now we are going to use the smudge tool again, the little finger, and we will go to the painting brushes. And we are going to use, what was it again? The wet acrylic brush. Let's check the opacity. It's set to 50% and the size is set to 8%. And we are going to use this brush to make our clouds look more wispy. We are going to follow the shape of our clouds. We're making rounded motions again, but it makes those edges look softer. We can pull the clouds outward a little bit. You can also work on those insides here and make that a bit more wispy. You can also pull outwards a little bit here or inwards, whatever you like. As if the wind is dragging that cloud a little bit. As if it's blowing away. Just make sure that you make horizontal strokes here for that wind, just like with the water. That effect we created earlier. So rounded motions at the top and here on the inside, and for that wind effect you use horizontal strokes. Over here, let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 3%. For some more rounded motions here. And some horizontal strokes for that windy effect. So it's a combination of horizontal strokes and those rounded motions. Then finally, this big cloud over here. I can see some gaps, so we can fix that at the same time actually. Just make those rounded motions. Pushing and pulling the paint. Do the same over here. Make the brush a little bit bigger again. 13%. Let's zoom out and check it out. I think it's looking great. It just needs an extra little touch of warmth. We are going to do that on a new layer by tapping the plus. And again, we are going to set this layer to add. So tap the N, scroll down to add. And then for our brush, we are going to grab the soft brush under airbrushing. Here, the soft brush, and for the color, we are going to use this 7 color in the second row. The opacity of this brush is at 60% and the size is at 25. And we are gently going to go along these areas, lightening it up and adding warmth at the same time. Lighten this cloud a little bit. It really gives a little bit of extra oomph. Let's go over this cloud just a little bit. Over here. I think that's looking great. Let's check the difference. Just that little add layer that really gave it that extra light and warmth. Now that we have our clouds, now that we have our sky, we can move on to the other layers. If you want to save layer space, then you can merge the background layers to do so. We won't be touching those anymore. Now let's go to layer 2. Since it's pretty much in the background far away, I want to make this mountain a little bit more blurry. So we'll go to the magic wand, use Gaussian blur, and slide to the right for a gentle blur, something like 2 or 3%. I'll go for 3. Let's do the same for the next layer. That's layer 3. Again, go to the magic wand, Gaussian blur, and also go for 2 or 3% here. I'll go for a little bit less of a blur, so this time I'll choose 2, and then tap the magic wand again. Next, it's time to add texture to this mountain. So we'll go to layer 4. We don't want our texture to show up outside of the mountain, so we need to turn on alpha lock. And for our brush, we are going to use the rectangle brush. You can find it under textures. Over here, a rectangle. The opacity of this brush is at 50%. And the size, let's set that to 33%. And now for the color, let's grab this one over here. It's the 9th color in the second row. And let's add some texture. Let's just dab onto our mountain a few times to add a little bit of texture. This is enough. And if you don't like it, you can just tap with 2 fingers and try again. You can get these variations of texture. And do this until you like what you see. Then we'll move on to layer 5. Again, make sure to turn on alpha lock. So tap the layer, turn on alpha lock. And we are going to add some light and dark texture over here as well. Let's zoom out just a little bit. Then for our color, let's first grab this one. That's the 8th color in the second row. let's just tap on these mountains a few times. And then for some lighter texture, I would like to use the selection tool first. That's the S shape ribbon. We will set it to freehand. Do make sure that color fill is not turned on. This shouldn't be blue. This needs to be white. And I will make a selection, a little bit of a jagged selection like this. Loop around, close the selection like this. Then do the same over here. Jagged selection, loop around, close the shape. And for the color, let's grab a bluish color. I want to use this one over here, the second color in the third row. Then make sure to grab the brush and tap in this area a few times to add some of that texture. Then let's grab a different color as well. Let's also use this one, fourth color in the first row, for even more texture variety. Then turn off the selection by tapping the S shape ribbon. Then let's go over again for even more. And to make it merge a bit with the rest of the mountain. So let's also go back to this purple. That's the 8th color in the first row. Now we can go over again to make it a bit more subtle. Now we can move on to the next layer. Layer 6, let's just skip the tower for now. We'll just work on all the rocks first. Layer 6, let's turn on alpha lock. And for our color, let's first grab this one, last color in the first row. And let's just go over. Add a little bit of texture like this. Then switch to this color, second color in the first row. A little bit of that, especially to the lower areas, since those are going to be a little bit lighter, because our river is like a magical glowing river. Then let's move on to layer 8. Again, turn on alpha lock, and let's stick with this color for now. Let's add a little bit of light. And maybe a little bit of this blue, that 9th color in the first row. And then finally a little bit of a darker color like this one, 5th color in the third row. That's very dark. We can add some subtle texture. I like this. Move on to layer 9. Again, tap the layer, turn on alpha lock, and then for our color, let's grab this one. That's the 8th color in the second row. Let's tap a few times. Then we'll move on to a lighter color. Let's grab this one, for instance, second color in the third row. Add a little bit of light texture. Perhaps a little bit over here. And you can switch back and forth between colors. Let's also use this one, 4th color in the third row, to get a nice variation of textures. Then move on to layer 10. First, turn on alpha lock. Then for the color, let's first grab this one, 1st color in the third row. And just tap for some random texture. And then for other colors, let's grab this one, 4th color in the third row. Those are multiple layers of this lovely texture. Then this one over here, 5th color in the third row, for some darker texture. And then let's also grab this one, the 9th color in the first row. A little bit over here. And onto the front, layer 11, turn on alpha lock again. And then for our color, let's first grab this one, the 3rd color in the third row. Let's go over here. Then we'll switch to a darker color, the 5th color in the 3rd row. And we'll go over again, nicely darkening it. And then I also want to add a suggestion of trees over here. We'll do that by going to the treasure chest brush pack, scroll down, and let's use the pine tree forest brush. We'll stick with this color, 5th color in the 3rd row. The opacity of this brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to 4%. And let's just go over here. And it's very subtle. I'm not even sure if you can see it on camera, but it adds a little bit of that suggestion of a pine tree forest. Then let's make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus and let's add some more pine trees. We'll use the pine tree broad brush for that. The opacity of this brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to 15. Then let's tap a few times for a few trees. For our next step, we are going to add some mist to our scene, and we are going to start at the back again. So first let's go to layer 2, and let's make a new layer on top by tapping the plus. To make this mist only show up on our mountain, we are going to turn on clipping mask for this layer. Now it's clipped to the layer, and whatever we paint on this layer will only show up on our mountain. Now let's go to the brushes and go to the airbrushing brushes again and use the soft brush. Because it has such soft edges, it's perfect to add some mist or create some gradients. For our color, we are going to use this one over here, 1st color in the 1st row. The opacity of the brush is at 60%, and let's set the size to 13%. Now let's just glaze over the lower area for a little bit of mist there. It's really subtle, you don't have to add much. Then once you're happy, you can merge these layers if you're saving space, or we can just move on to layer 3 and add a new layer by tapping the plus and set this to clipping mask as well. We'll stick to the same color, add a little bit of mist here and over here. It nicely separates the different mountains. And on to the next one, layer 4. Again, you can merge these 2 layers once you're happy with them. You could even merge them with layer 2 over here. But as long as you have layer space, I would suggest just keeping the layers. Now over here, let's tap the plus again, and let's set it to clipping mask again as well. Now let's go over this lower area for a little bit of a gradient, and let's also switch to this blue, 3rd color in the 2nd row, because that glow, that mist of our magical river is reaching this area. Then move on again, layer 5, tap the plus for a new layer, tap the layer, set it to clipping mask, and now we're sticking with the blue. We're going to add some mist over here and over here as well, just a little bit. Then move on to layer 6, tap the plus, tap the layer and turn on clipping mask, and then go over the lower area. You can see that it's nicely separating these parts here, creating more depth. Let's move on to layer 8, tap the plus, set it to clipping mask. And again, with this blue, add a little bit of mist here. And to add some variety, I also want to use a purplish color. Let's use this one, 2nd color in the 3rd row. Add a little bit of purplish mist here, just for some variety. Then moving on to layer 9, let's tap the plus again, set this layer to clipping mask. And let's go back to that blue color, 3rd color in the 2nd row. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger, 25%. And let's go over here, adding some of that mist. Then we need some mist over here, so let's go to layer 10, tap the plus, then set it to clipping mask. And and then add some over here, nicely separating these parts. And then we'll move on to layer 11, tap the plus. I don't mind if the mist we are going to paint here will show up anywhere else, so we don't need clipping mask here. Now let's go to the brushes, back to the treasure chest brush pack, and we are going to use the clouds brush. The opacity of this brush is at 100% and the size is at 17%. Now let's just go over here and add a few clouds like this. Then we'll blur them a little bit by going to the magic wand, use Gaussian blur, and slide to the right to about 3%. And then tap the magic wand again. Now I also want some mist around our tower, so let's create a layer on top of the tower layer, layer 12. Tap the plus, and then with this clouds brush, we'll go over here, add a little bit of mist. I actually also want it to be on top of that rock, so let's move the layer upward to here. Now it's automatically turned to clipping mask, so let's turn that off. Otherwise it'll only show up on the rock and not on our tower. And to make it nice and light and glowing, let's set the layer blending mode to add. And we'll lower the opacity just a little bit to 70%, and we can blur it a little bit by going to the magic wand, using Gaussian blur, and slide to the right to 4%, and then tap the magic wand again. Next I want to add some glow to the water, so let's go to layer 7, that's our water layer. And for our brush we will go to the luminance brushes over here, and we'll use the light brush. We will still use that blue color. The opacity of this brush is at 100% and the size is at 8%. We are going to make some horizontal strokes in some areas of the water to add a little bit of this glow effect. Also add it over here. Just remember to only create these horizontal strokes. Over here and here around the corner. That's a nice effect. Now let's move on to our tower. It needs some texture, it needs some windows. Let's start with that texture. Let's go to the layer with the tower. It's over here, layer 12. Let's first turn on alpha lock so we won't be painting outside of the tower. And now for our brush, I want to go to the charcoal brushes and use the burnt tree brush. Opacity of this brush is at 65%, and let's set the size to 17%. And then for the color, let's grab this one over here, 8 color in the second row. And let's just tap on our tower. I think it's hard to see on camera, but it's adding a nice subtle texture. Let's also use this color, 9th color in the first row, to add some lighter texture. Might be easier to see. So just a few dabs. And then we'll switch to the fine liner brush, which is part of the treasure chest brush pack. Where is it? There is it. And for the color for this brush, we'll use this one over here, 5th color in the 3rd row. It's nice and dark. The opacity of the brush is at 100% and the size is at 25. At first we'll follow this like switch hat. First we'll follow this edge and a little bit of a shadow here. Let's also add a few of these random horizontal dabs to our roof. Just for some random texture. Let's add a little horizontal line here, breaking our tower into these little segments. Grab We can add some vertical lines here. Little line here. Just some random stuff. And then we need windows. Let's make a new layer for the windows. Let's tap the plus. And for the color, we are going to use this one over here. Third color in the first row. Let's first add a little window over here, rounded shape, like this. And let's also add these windows here. It's 4 windows next to each other, and a little door over here. Now it's not super tidy, so let's switch to the eraser. Let's tap and hold the eraser to make sure that it's set to the fine liner. Then let's zoom in a little bit, make the brush small, let's say 8%. And we'll refine it a little bit. Make this nice and tidy. Not too tidy. You can use a little bit of character just along the edges to make this more like rectangular shape. And a little door there. Now let's turn on alpha lock for this layer, tap it, turn on alpha lock, and for the color we are going to use this one again, 5th color in the 3rd row. Let's make the brush smaller, let's set it to 5%, and let's make a shape like this. As if there are more windows on the inside there. As if we can see through this area in the tower. And now we are going back to the layer with the windows, and we are going to turn off alpha lock. And now we are going to turn on the lights in this tower. Let's go to the magic wand and then to bloom. Then slide to the right until you see the lights turning on. And you can play around with the burn. If you turn up the burn, it'll be brighter. And you can play with the size. If you turn it down, the light will be closer to your shape. And we want it to be pretty close. Let's say like this. So the bloom is set to 70%, size to 29, and burn to 57. And now for some final touches, let's make a new layer on top of all the others. So let's tap the plus here. And we can add some magical lights, some magical like wisps. Let's go to the luminance brushes and then use the light pen. And for our color, we are going to grab this bright pink, the 6th color in the 3rd row. The opacity of this brush is at 100%, and let's turn the size up all the way to 100%. And now let's just randomly place some of these lights. You can double tap to make it brighter. And I'm just imagining these to be like wisps. I think they add a nice touch to the whole scene. Because of course with the tower it's a little bit mysterious. It looks a bit like a magical landscape. So in some random places, add some of these lights. Perhaps here at the top of this hill. And maybe here near the base of the tower. And let's also use that blue that we have, that 3rd color in the 2nd row. And we can add a little bit of sparklies to the water. Just make sure that you tap twice to make it nice and bright. We can add some over here. And if you press lightly, your brush dab will be small. And if you press harder, it'll be bigger. Some over here. And that's it. You have created a mysterious, magical landscape. Now that was pretty easy. Why don't you go and turn this into a streak and follow another tutorial? Perhaps you will like this one, for example. Of course, don't forget to share your results. I would like to thank you for watching, and I will see you next time for the next tutorial.